Welcome to the Backyard Professor Chess videos. I'm up here on Big Elk Creek by Palisades Reservoir. Those are some of the pictures you've been seeing, some of the video. And I'm going to do some more chessercising with you. The more we study chessboards to learn how to read them, the better our analytical minds become in improving our chess. Because if you can see what the chessboard wants you to do, then you can begin making the correct moves. I mean, that's just simple logic. It really is. So here we have a game by Silman and Gross that is really an interesting introduction to helping us study the chessboard. And he comes up to d5. Silman is playing the white pieces. His opponent is playing the black. D is going to take c4 immediately. And queen comes up here to a4. Check. And now he can take that pawn back, in the process developing a piece. Gross develops a piece. Silman takes the pawn. That's one good way to get your pawn back. Whoop. Bishop comes up to c6. Silman brings his knight out. And now bishop to d5. You see, he's slowly making his way around to try to get rid of that pesky queen in the center. She just simply drops down behind the pawn on d3, however, so it's not a big crisis. And now he continues chasing that queen. So now he goes all the way back down to his original square. And it looks like Gross has a better development at this point than Silman does, doesn't it? That's because he does. We want to analyze that to make sure we understand what the board is calling for us to do. Otherwise, we're not going to know what to do. He castles. This is a wonderful opportunity for us to have Silman himself describe the imbalances on the board and how we can go about utilizing those imbalances for our own good, for the betterment of our game. C takes d4 here. Knight takes d4. There's a good central argument going on. The bishop takes the bishop on g2. The king takes the bishop on g2. So Gross has eliminated Silman's supporter of his king, and we see now that because the way Silman opened, these two squares are potentially weak, although the king has come up to guard those two squares. And now bishop comes up to c5, challenging the knight. Rook, he pulls over to d1 to grab the open file straight across from the queen. It's always a good idea to put your rooks across from the queens. You might be able to do a discovered check on the queen, which is really interesting to do sometimes. Silman is coming up the center here really good. Queen dodges out of the way. It's also a good idea if you see your opponent put your rook opposite your queen, eventually get your queen off that file. You can have some nasty discovered attacks if you're not careful with that. Now Silman brings his queen over. Bishop goes ahead and takes the knight. Rook goes ahead and takes the bishop. So now he's utilizing his open file really nice. E comes up to 5, challenging the rook. The rook goes back down to d1. The rook doesn't have to be any closer to have his influence. He has that influence all the way up to that knight, whether he's way back here or right there, right? So it's okay if he puts that back on d1, he still has the open file. I mean, that doesn't need to be explained. You know that. And then knight b6. Now, it's at this point that Silman begins his lecture. I just wanted to show you the beginning of the game to show you how the masters and international masters play. Now, the question is, what's going on in this seemingly boring position at this point? The pawn structure is more or less symmetrical, right? Nobody can lay claim to any space advantage. They're both fairly even that way. All of the pieces are well defended. Neither king is necessarily in trouble or under attack, right? So, aside from the fact that white's pieces are more aggressively posted, and the reason why is because they are taking control of d5. You see that? 3 pieces to d5. Therefore, white is more aggressively posted. It's just a simple, logical look at what the pieces are pointing at altogether. But aside from this fact, and the fact that black's knights are passively defending, the one major imbalance is the minor piece difference. Did you notice that? If you don't sweat it. It's okay. We want to train ourselves to review the imbalances in our minds every time we play a game of chess. White has a bishop and a knight, while black is stuck with 2 knights. Because of the nature of this opening in the board at this point in the game, white is going to use Steinitz rules of limiting black's knights. You see how just looking at the imbalances already presents a course of action for him to take. This can happen in our games too. The minute you see an imbalance, you automatically know, well, I have to keep the knights back. So you understand you're going to be doing a few pawn moves. You understand you're going to be placing your pieces where the knights on black's side is ineffective. You see how simple that is? This doesn't take rocket science. You don't have to be a grandmaster to think this way. You don't have to be a certain age. You don't have to have a certain IQ. You can do it just through the imbalances. They present the plan themselves. What he's going to do is he's going to restrict this knight here. Now here's how he's going to do it. How would you think he's going to do it? He says, I'm going to put b2 to b3. And that little pawn move restricts this knight because now he can't come into here or come over to here. And I know the knight here is already protecting that square, but this pawn move prevents that move. Isn't that interesting? Just one little pawn move, and he's beginning to restrict the knight. Now you say, well, it's just a little thing. That's right. It's just a little thing. And the more little things we put into our games that favors us, the stronger our game. So do the little things every single move, and within 10 or 15 moves, all of your little things add up to a huge, powerful game of chess. And Silman emphasizes that a lot of his students recognize the imbalances. They see what they should do, but then they turn around and don't do it. They ignore it. That's not how we want to do this. We want to do the little things also. It's not a waste of a move at this point to start pushing those pawns to limit these knights. I just want to make that clear. And he said, actually, once I do this, then I'm going to push my A pawn also, and I will proceed to push the A pawn, and I'll kick that knight off his perch. Now he can't go forward into Silman's side. He can't go there. So because he's taken that one little pawn move and now he can chase the pawn and he gains his queenside space, he can potentially chase this knight back to there. Look at the difference of that position. Isn't that fun to see? It's fun to know how to do this. That's the one thing I love about Silman, is he gives us a step-by-step blow on what to do in any given position. And he shows through his chess course, his 6 or 7 or 8 books, however many he's written, he shows hundreds of examples of this. That's why I love this stuff. Now, Silman is also going to place his bishop on the flexible e3 square. He's also going to do this. And the reason why, he says, Oh, and he's going to move his queen up to b5. And the reason why is because he has a cross-cut section that's going toward the king, and his queen is going to be powerful against the queen side once he moves these pawn moves and chases the knight away. He will have the ability to work on the queen side. Isn't that fascinating how that works? So this is how Silman is advocating utilizing the imbalances of this boring position. Well, there's nothing to do. I don't know what to do. Yes, you do. You know, because of the imbalances of the knights versus the bishop knight, what to do with your pawns, good places to place your pieces so as to get an active, powerful game. You do know what to do. You're never lost with the imbalances system. Oh man, the sun's coming up over the hill. Is that going to wreck this video? I bet it is. Son of a gun. Well, look at the beautiful sunrise over the mountain. Here we go. Woohoo! That's a new, huh? That's a first for me. Well, I've got to switch positions now. You're not going to see this. Ah, the glory of Mother Nature, huh? Well, there you go. There's a spectacular sunrise right over the chessboard. I mean, it doesn't get better than this. Right out in the middle of the beautiful world. Spectacular. Okay, we pause to bring you this sunrise, and we shall shortly get back to our regularly scheduled chessercising. Ah, it's a beautiful day out here in the middle of paradise playing chess with you. Anyway, what all of these do is he says it adds up to an unpleasant pressure on the black position. This is the idea with these various different moves in this particular board position. So the first thing he does is he does put that bishop e3 on the flexible e3 square. Now he brings his rook over to d8, and why not? Great move. Control the challenge, the open file. You don't have to let your opponent have the open file for free. In fact, it's advised strongly not to. Yeah, that's great stuff. Now queen comes up to b5, just like he was planning. And he's going to extend pressure onto the queen side and come up into here, right? He's making each of his pieces better than his opponent's. His queen is more actively placed than his opponent's queen, right? His bishop at this point is more actively placed than either one of those knights. He's going to get his knight going pretty quick, but he does have a challenge on the open files. So, queen comes up to e6, b3, here we go. Now see, he's systematically doing what the board tells him to do. Now he's beginning to limit the knight. It's very nice how he does this. And h6, he comes up, he's going to bring more kingside space. He's going to avoid any back rank mating checkmating problems. However, black should have played more aggressively. Now he's taken the rook. Now the rooks exchange. And that makes sense. The rooks exchange, except now Silman has the file, right? Well, rook comes over to c8. He's going to grab his open file, while white has his open file. He's got a knight down here that's completely unprotected, so black is doing the correct thing, right? Hit the targets. Hit the unprotected pieces. Keep your eyes out for tactics so that you can get unsupported pieces when you need to. Well, he's going to protect the knight by bringing his rook up to d3. Again, he's making each one of his pieces more powerful than his opponent's. Isn't that cool how that works? It's really interesting. His queen is more active. His knight is more active. These guys are playing a defensive role. His rook is now more active. His bishop is more active. This is really interesting to watch it progress as you improve your position each time. I love how he does this. Now he says queen c6, and he puts a question mark here. He asks this question. He says, Even after the exchange of queens, black's position is going to remain fairly unpleasant at this point because white is building the pressure. You notice there's not a blitzkrieg, blitzoid, go-all-out attack against the king right now. No, he is quietly, gently making everything in his side better than his opponent's. It's not a have to rush in and finish him off. Not at all. This is an excellent way to play chess too. Queen zips over here and takes the central pawn at e5. A very excellent move. Now look at the central power of Silman's position, the more active pieces compared to black. This is very interesting how he does this. Well, rook goes to e8, but of course, yeah, challenge that queen. You don't have to let her stay there. She comes to d6. On the file, in an outpost, supported by the knight, the pawn, the rook. Pretty interesting. However, you say, wait a minute. Oh, no. I lied. Queen to d6, supported by the rook. Yeah, queen d5 would have blown it. I was saying, what the heck? Silman, you can't be that stupid. And he's not. I just have to place the piece right. Queen d6, and he's going to swap the queens on his terms. He wants to swap the queens on the file that the rook controls. I mean, if you're going to swap queens, put it in the best spot to swap first, and then you remain in control. I love how he does this. Now he says knight takes e4, and now black loses by force. That was not the right move. So the queen swaps. See how it's obliterated the queen side? Now he had limited this knight, so the knight can't get into this, but now look at his queenside pawn structure. It's completely shattered. Black hasn't got a prayer here. This is fascinating how he sees ahead to see that, right? And now he's going to kick the knight off his perch, just exactly like he planned because the position said to. And this knight takes c3. He's going to swap the knights this direction. And A goes ahead and takes that knight. The pawn takes the knight up here. And the knight comes back over here to d5. And B takes a7. And he's got the passed pawn. He's going to be able to run it in. And so at this point, black's case is hopeless and he resigns. And he illustrates how this shows black's case is helpless. If, for example, rook goes to a8, he says rook takes d5. Now C takes d5 and b4 because he's got that pawn covered. So he starts pushing his b pawn, followed by b5, b6, b7. He's going to eventually end up there, and the poor rook's going to not be able to stop him because he's got that pawn protected. So, and he's a power up because he is using an offensive as opposed to a defensive maneuver. It put black completely on the defensive. So this is a great illustration. This is out of his amateur's mind, by the way. I know several of you have said that you've gotten the amateur's mind, and I'm really excited for you. I'm looking forward to seeing what you learn too, because this book will change you. Now, you have to understand, maybe it's me because I don't have the brain that some of you younger guys do, you know. I'm getting old and weak and decrepit. I've been through this 4 times this year. This book, completely through it. And do you know that every time I go through this fabulous book, I gain more out of it? Now, there might be some of you who can just read it once and completely absorb the 400 pages of fabulous information. Good for you. I envy you. I really do. In the meantime, it is always very helpful to review and re-review and learn how to play chess like Silman does. So there's your Chessercise for today. Happy checkmating. Happy Chessercising. I'm going to go sing in the woods, and I'll make some video for you out of this beautiful country also. Maybe I'll do another chess video too. And, hey, I will see you all in the next video.